May the 13th, 2023 will come to order. Roll call, Mr. Enders.
Mr. Allen.
Present.
Ms. Calhoun.
Here.
Ms. Dobler.
Patrice. Behind you.
Is she attending?
She's there. She muted?
Ms. Dobler, are you with us?
Yes. She's very quiet.
We just switch her over.
Ms. Edwards.
Here.
Mrs. Grant.
Here.
Mr. Kinley.
Here.
Mrs. Petrosky.
Here.
Mrs. Stemler.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
All 9 members present.
Next will be the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm going to bring Mrs. English forward so she can talk to us about the Youth Development Task Force and recognize pursuit.
Okay, so we had a few students not able to attend tonight, but we do have Gabby. Gabby, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Gabrielle Seals. I'm part of the club, Youth Development Task Force at the Children's School.
Can you tell them a little bit about the club?
Yes.
Or do you want me to take care of it?
Thank you. So we go to Williamsport every once a month, to meet with other schools in the county and in the division, and we talk about problems and issues and how we can help within the school.
So Youth Development Task Force focuses on the mental and physical well-being of the youth in our county. We currently have a drive going on right now. You want to show them the bracelets?
I'm wearing one right now, but each one represents a color. Each color represents something. So the green represents mental health awareness, the purple is strength and wisdom, the blue is peacefulness, calmness, and gentleness. And we actually got a grant for these bracelets, so now we're just passing them out to anyone who shows our message and what we're about.
So our focus this year is kindness, empathy, and tolerance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So hopefully
Thank
have
you.
something for you.
We're passing that around, Jody. It's being passed around.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Before we move on, board members, I just realized I have a mic on and there's one sitting in front of me. Does somebody not have a microphone?
Probably Patrice's.
Patrice's isn't here.
Okay. I was just concerned that I stole someone. Go ahead.
Moving on to presentations, communications, Dr. Ulmer.
The only thing that I do want to bring to the board's attention is there's a lot coming out about the state budget and the impact of the school funding lawsuit on the state budget. I've been sharing everything that I'm reading with the board. Let me know if you have questions. There's a lot. The state budget, Mr. Enders and I are going to talk about at a future meeting, but just know there's a lot happening in the state budget conversation. I don't believe our General Assembly is in session, so I'm not sure where the state budget's actually going to go, but the governor did propose the budget. So everything I've got, I've shared, but that's pretty much where we're standing at this point.
President's report, we had an executive session was held before the meeting at 5:45 for the purpose of legal, personnel, and safety. Adding to that, the main goal of the school board is to provide to the children of this district the best education possible for them to be successful in their future endeavors. This does not mean to give students the minimum education possible or to give students everything someone wants. It is to give our students a balance so that they are prepared for the next steps after graduation, whether it be to work, to go on to further education, or go in the military. We are also aware of the need to look at the community as a whole and what the taxpayers can reasonably afford. We are now at the place of drawing to a conclusion. Transportation was a missing piece of the puzzle, and I will identify this now. We have 2 bus companies that we use. Martin runs 18 buses and Susquehanna runs 11 buses. So when you look at the 3 scenarios that we are looking at, scenario A being JSE has K to 3, Avis has 4 and 5, and the Salisbury is left vacant, the estimated transportation increase would be $72,700. When you look at scenario B, Jersey Shore Elementary is 3 to 5, Avis and Salisbury house half of K to 2. The estimated transportation increase would be $160,505. Scenario C, the elementary buildings remain K to 5. Students will be shifted to equalized class size. The estimated transportation increase would be $100,788. The bus transportation is an estimate, and once a decision is made and the bus routes are looked at for next year, these numbers will almost definitely change. Also, as a district, we get a decent percentage of that back, but we're always a year behind on bus subsidies. The board is in the process of pulling all the information that they have received together so as to decide on a well-formed vote potentially within the next 30 days.
Mrs. Gomes, could you give us that last number for Steve, please? I didn't catch that.
For the transportation, $100,788. Next we have, oh wait, I'm still back here. I have to go backwards. Next we have the IU report.
I'd like to yield my time. I have nothing to say.
Student representative? Dr. Omer, the superintendent's report.
I have 2 presentations I'm going to go through with you this evening. Give me 1 second, please. I don't know why. How come I'm only getting my background? What's that?
Looks warm and sunny.
It looks warm and sunny, I wanna go back. Sorry, I've never had this do this before. What's that? Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. I'm going to start with high school. As unfortunately happened a month ago, our high school administrator was not able to attend tonight. So you do have these in front of you. I did initially say that I would do CTE with Mr. Keene's recent resignation, but I am also going to go through high school with you, so I'm starting there. They did give you their building goals, which is the first couple of slides of the presentation. I want to go down and draw your attention to, I'm actually on page 4 right now, things that the high school team discussed and are looking forward to for 23-24 and where they're going to spend their time and focus. which you can see on page 4. I also want to highlight work that the high school team has been doing on page 5. One of the things that has changed in our teacher evaluations is our staff used to have something as part of their evaluations called student learning objectives, or SLOs for short. And the state changed those to now we're doing SPMs, or student performance measures. And the thing that really was the big change is it used to have to be data specific. The teachers had to do like a pre-test and a post-test and demonstrate with data that their students moved from point A to point B. We've opened that in the most recent change in the law to they can be more subjective. We could be working on a goal for the high school, and if a team of faculty members is working on a goal of doing something in their building, whether it's school spirit or community and culture, they can have more subjective things as part of their teacher performance goal. We have when that law was passed, we developed as an admin team a rubric, so it's not truly subjective. There is a rubric that we're using to score those, but I want to draw your attention to the list of things that you have groups of faculty in the high school taking on and working on their specific student performance measure, whether it is school-wide positive behavior, which was always a part of that building, but they're doing specific tasks in groups as part of their efforts in the high school, which is something that's pretty interesting. As a summary, major things hitting the high school budget. You're going to hear this across multiple budgets and already have. Some of the general things that principals are buying from year to year are simply costing more money. So that's one thing that is affecting the high school budget. Updating textbooks in the high school budget, you will see replacement of class materials that are things that are consumable. And you heard some of this from Mr. Valdus, you're going to see it in the high school as well, is aging equipment. What I asked the principals to put together, and you're seeing that in the next slide that looks kind of like a chart, is where are there items in the budget that have increased or decreased from last year's budget to this year's budget. So this slide is an overview of where are the lines that decreased or increased in the high school budget. So when you look down across, what are those changes? The things that Mr. Keene told you are impacting the overall high school budget. He's noted where those increases or decreases are. And then overall, the bottom line, you're reading that correctly, there is a slight decrease in the high school budget from 22-23 to 23-24. Questions from the board? Again, sorry, go ahead.
The one thing to point out, not in your numbers, it's all reflective in this numbers, but I do want to point out, because I know we talked about it during the middle school budget. Originally, we had budgeted appliances for the life skills classroom for the high school budget for next year. Through the fall, and actually through board approval, if you remember, I think it was roughly November, December, we asked for a budget transfer from CTE for a small dollar amount to life skills. We were able to receive a $5,000 grant from West Company to pay for that. So when you actually look at your budget book, you'll see appliances as a line item and equipment as a line item in the life skills in the special ed area, but it'll all be zeros. So I just want to point out that those are some of the things that we are doing now, trying to help with next year's budget as well. More than likely, I just recently talked to Mrs. Mockmer up there. She's having West Company come and visit, and we are going to talk about how that coffee cart program is a K-12 initiative, and how we might have some other areas that would like to Went on tour. That's all I want to point out.
Any board questions about high school? I do want to point out that you have all, in your budget binder, you have every line of this budget. So while I highlighted those that changed, you do have them all. Alright, and I'm gonna move on to CTE. You also have a copy of this at your seat. I'm gonna go to page 3. Again,
No, you're good.
you can see the things that are impacting the CTE budget. One of them is the cost of supplies. CTE is a supply-heavy environment, whether it's 2x4s in building maintenance or metal in manufacturing engineering. All of it is stuff that we're having to purchase for kids to work on. So that's impacting the CTE budget. We are still actively looking at equipment and matching grants for equipment. We talked about that last year for the first time, and that there is a pocket, you do put a pocket of money in CTE to allow us to go after matching grants, which is a thing in CTE world. We do get Perkins grant money. Skills USA is something that we talked about after the CTE audit that's back in action and part of the CTE world, but there's also a cost to that. So it's one of those things that when they did the audit, they said, well, you have to have a Skills USA program, which means now you have a cost for kids attending those activities as part of that Skills USA program. So that's coming back into your CTE budget. Anything that is a Chapter 339 audit or a Perkins audit requirement is built back into this budget as they identified things that we had to address in those 2 audit processes. We're adding those back in here. I will note at the bottom of that, it just says in discussion. There's no money in here dedicated to new programs, but if there's a program that the OAC or LAC would need to look at for 24-25, we would have to have that discussion in 23-24. And then if you go to the next page, it's very similar to the chart that you saw before. This is where you see the increases and decreases across the different CTE programs. So in culinary arts, there's an increase for supplies. There is an increase, a minor increase in childcare, but that's asterisk on purpose, and it is every year. Remember that you do offset your expenses in the childcare program because of the cost that people have to attend it. So even though you may, as a board, see in your budget an increased cost in that program, that could be passed on. There is an increase in computer networking. Again, that is for equipment. Industrial technology, that is because of cost of materials. CTE program itself, there will be an increased cost in some of your actual industry certifications. So industry certifications are required. In order to meet the requirements of the CTE program, every child in every program has to be able to earn an industry certification of some sort. Well, if those costs, licenses, whatever they are, go up, we don't get to pick and choose. Well, you just can't do it because the industry certification is a requirement of a CTE program. So when those costs go up, that is what you're seeing in your budget. There is not a change in the cost for staff development. We did not increase anything in the office of the CTE director, which it is noted there. Those are like the OAC, LAC meeting expenses, the cost of a NOCTI exam for the kids, or the certificates that they get at the end of the year. There's no change there. but you can see the impact at the bottom of those supply and license costs to the district.
Just for clarity, Dr. Omer, on the 1380, because that's such a high number compared to the other ones, that is multiple programs.
Yes, that's multiple programs.
I think it's 4.
Yeah, I think 4. I'm trying to think.
Automotive,
There's at least 3 I know, but there
Construction.
might be 4.
welding, Grant Whelan's programs in
Building
there.
maintenance, there's at least 4 off the top of my head that would be, so you're dividing that. Quick math, 5, 6, 9,000 across 4 programs.
For the general CTE program, that is where that $15,000 matching funds that we were referencing is. So just about half of that 1390, that 27,000 is those funds that are budgeted for matching grants.
Do you know who is doing the skills USA or not?
We approved an advisor. I'm trying to remember who that was. Do you remember who that was? Skills USA? I could look, but I'll look after
Okay.
my
I was
screen's
just
off.
curious,
But we
yeah.
did,
I think you
We
have
have
more than one of
someone
them.
doing it.
Maybe not.
I want to say Miss Garber.
I think you're right on that.
Off the top, then I'll let you know.
Alright.
Off the top of my head, that's the name that comes to mind. That's everything for my report.
Moving on to courtesy of the floor. This courtesy of the floor will be for public comment on voting agenda items. State your name, address, and agenda item you would like to address. You will have 3 minutes. By the looks of the sign up, Mrs. Beerley, you're the only one at this point. You said maybe or maybe not, so.
Yeah, I wanted to look a little more closely at the calendar before I decided. Ray Beerley, Pyatt Township. My comment's directed towards the calendar for the next school year. It's been a while since I've been in the classrooms. I still talk to some people, of course, friends that I have, family members and such. But one of my concerns is reviewing that schedule. We have 4 Act 80 days and the possibility of 5 FID days. I believe we used all 5 of those this year, is that correct? Okay, and those, that's 9 days, and those days will most likely all occur before Keystone exams and PSSAs. That's 9 lost instructional days, and, you know, pardon me for thinking this, I just don't consider FID days equivalent to a day in the classroom with the classroom teacher present, personally. And I know I was instructor in biology, which was the Keystone Trigger course at the high school, and to lose 9 instructional days for the amount of content that you have to cover, and in not only cover, but also in a fair amount of depth in order for these kids to be successful on the Keystone exams, that's a lot of lost instructional time. And personally, I'm not sure that's a good idea. And then as far as those FID days, do we evaluate the effectiveness of those days in any ways? How?
And so I will say, and I was gonna say this during the calendar conversation, but I will point out to the board that I did already say to the board, but I'll say it again when we get to the calendar. I've changed the language on the calendar that the FID days are not automatically used. So I added makeup days back, I added a makeup day back in, so there's 3 instead of 2, so that I can determine if we have enough time to make a FID decision ahead of time, they won't be automatic.
Okay,
There could be makeup days as well, but it'll be based on the day.
yeah, because that's a lot of time, in-person time to lose. And this is just a personal opinion. 5 in-service days before the start of school. Usually, I was always pretty excited to go back to the classroom after having the summer off and, you know, rewinding and getting the energy levels back up again. I think my last year, we had 3 in-service days before the start of school. And again, this is just my personal opinion. 5 days, by the end of those 5 days, I promise you, any enthusiasm I would have had would have been sucked clear out of my body and drifted away. That's a lot of in-service time before you start school. Thanks.
That ends courtesy of the floor. Letter D, personnel. Accepting a letter of retirement from John Beveridge, middle school art teacher, after 30 years of service with the district. Appointment of Michael Hopkins to a full-time custodial position in the senior high school. Appointment of Brenda Schaefer as a food service substitute. The Director of Career and Technical Education job description. Corrections to the spring coach list of positions and stipends for 2022-2023 school year as attached. Accepting a letter of resignation from Kirsty Edwards as a substitute crossing guards. That is effective February 28th. FMLA from February the 7th, 2023 through February the 14th, 2023 approximately for employee 2022-23-14. Accepting a letter of resignation from Adam Klein, middle school boys basketball position. The transfer of Jody Weislegel from a special education teacher position to an Act 93 Director of Pupil Services position at a starting salary of $97,000 annually, effective June the 5th, 2023. The salary will be prorated for the remainder of the 2022-2023 and shall remain the same for 2023-2024. Brandon DePasquale as a volunteer coach for baseball, effective this year. The Director of Pupil Services, which is the official title, is basically your person in charge of special ed. May I have a motion for A through J?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those not in favor, like sign. Motion carries. Letter E, curriculum instruction. This is where we're talking about the proposed calendar for 23-24. The first student day is August the 24th. November break for students is November 20th through the 27th, including parent conference days. The winter break is from December 25th through January the 2nd. First semester ends on January 15th. Spring break is March 28th through April the 2nd with potential weather makeup days. The last student day is identified as May the 30th and graduation June the 8th. May I have a motion for A?
Second.
Any questions? And did you want to make further comments, or you?
Other than I did comment about the change in the language for school closing and or FID days. Other than that, it's similar to this year in structure, except for spring break is earlier than it is this year because of the way Easter falls, which pushes PD day a little earlier to break up that long stretch in February. And I did get one of the other adjustments was board input on Labor Day weekend, that is something that's slightly different than this year. Other than that, it's very similar to what you saw previously. I will explain for those of you on the board that aren't part of that process, there is a committee that looks at this, that has a board member, has staff and faculty and administrators from across the district that looks at this and gives me feedback, and and actually at one point, thank you to a faculty member who gave me that suggestion, we even pulled attendance data to look at, like, where do we run into, like, if we don't have a Friday before a long weekend, what does that do to our attendance versus a Tuesday? So we do look at all that information to try and create a calendar that works for people.
Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, like sign. Motion carries. Building and grounds, no discussion or action at this point in time. Moving over to finance items, we have awarding 2023-2024 athletic ball and supply bid awards with a total award of $14,468.43. And awarding 2023-2024 custodial maintenance supply bid with a total award of $20,042.40. May I have a motion for A and B?
Motion.
Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, like sign. Motion carries. Miscellaneous items. Agreement with the township for the girls softball team to utilize the former Nippenose Valley Elementary School field to practice and potentially play games. An MOU between Jersey Shore Area School District and the Jersey Shore Area Education Association for reimbursement tuition costs for credits taken in the fall of 22-23. And a 2-year referral agreement between Crossroads Counseling Incorporated and Jersey Shore Area School District. May I have a motion for A through C?
I'll second.
Questions? Letter C, is that a renewal or is that new?
That's a renewal.
Letter C is a renewal.
Letter A, this is just for practices at this time, or is it games also?
Practice and potentially games, they would be allowed to use it. My understanding, and the coaches really did work on this, it was their suggestion. We do run into some times where sometimes the borough field takes a while to dry out, but we could be playing on this field or practicing on this field. So we engaged a conversation with the township about this agreement. The only restriction is they can't bump a little league use, because that's their primary purpose. So practices are better because we can get them in before Little League would show up. Game might be an issue, but they're willing to allow us to play games if we can get that to work out and we need it.
And how are they going to get over to the field?
We would
For
have to
practice?
transport them.
So we'll have a bus, or we don't know for that?
It's really just a backup in the event that we get stuck like we have before,
Yeah.
and it's really wet and we can't get on the borough field.
Can you fill us in on the status of the borough field now? Is it
They
usable?
were just working on it earlier this week, it's ready to go.
Okay. Thanks.
Dr. Ulmer, was the scoreboard put in yet? I know they were
It's-
working on the,
It's supposed to be in before the season begins. I believe, the last I heard, it was en route to here.
okay.
I know it's been
Thank-
purchased, I just don't think it's fully installed yet.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, like sign. Motion carries. Next, we move on to old business. Is there anyone that would like to offer anything from the board as part of a discussion? Hearing none, we'll be moving on to courtesy of the floor. This courtesy of the floor will be for public comment on non-agenda items. State your name, address, and identify what you would like to address, and you will have 3 minutes. I have a couple signed up, but you did not have to sign up for this section. Lily?
If you could please take one, pass one down, I have some information. My name is Dr. Lily Langlois, Cummings Township. Again, I'm here to talk about Salatiesburg. I hope there's enough copies. If I can first address your attention to Figure 1. I've collected some data. All of this data you've seen in a similar format. I've just put it in a little bit different. Thank you, Ben Enders, for giving me all this data, most of it. Let's look at the long-term charter school costs for the district. Starting in 2000, $0. The last 20 years went up to $3 million. That's pretty quick. So, in the early years, there was a recapture program that was really strong, and I heard they was able to keep the budget below $1 million. That was a very wise investment, and I think we should relook at that again, seriously. In 2013, Nipponose closed. What happened? In the last decade, our charter school expenditures went from 1.5 to $3 million. So it wasn't just Nipponose closing that happened, it was a bunch of things. The pandemic, the mask fiasco, we'll call it, all of those coincided to huge charter school numbers, expenditures. Let's go down to Figure 2. This is for Sugar Valley Rural Charter School. They started in the year 2000. Why? Because the public school was closed down in 1996. There's a pattern here to this trend. So they started off with 200 enrolled students, and now they're up to 600. Every year they gain. So while we're losing, they're gaining. Right now, they have 70 of our students in this district. That's quite a bit. And I can almost bet you most of them are from Region 3. Why? Nipponose. Remember all that money we were supposed to save? Millions upon millions. It's really hard to predict these numbers, but there's a pattern here. If we can please go to Figure 3 on the next page. Ben Anders gave me more detailed numbers on the last 6 years of enrollment. So we have expenditures rising from 2 million to 3 million in the last 6 years. On the other y-axis, I have student enrollment. Sugar Valley is in light gray. Dark gray is all the other cyber schools, all the other charter schools, which I should say are primarily 2 charter schools, Commonwealth Charter and PA Cyber, both of them online. So what happened in the last 6 years? Sugar Valley stabilized while the online cyber schools have taken more and more students every year. It has got back from the pandemic. That's good. We need to continue that trend. That is where we are just bleeding money from this district. So think of what you could do if you had a recruitment program to get back $1 million. Here we're complaining about Salatiesburg running costs $1 million a year. You're spending $3 million annually in perpetuity. So this board needs foresight. When you make this decision on scenario A, B, and C, I'm voting for C. Let's look at Table 1. Where are you putting your money and what gets you the best value? Look at the top 10%. How Avis and Salatiesburg are in the top 10% of schools rated in the state of Pennsylvania. That's really impressive. I'm not going to mention the other numbers. They're not as glamorous. So why would you take out, these 2 schools have been on the chopping block back and forth for years, decades. Why would you take out these assets? These are what is bringing people to this community. 6 families alone went to Salatiesburg last year looking to begin enrollment here. Why? Because they do research before they move to this area. They want their kids to go to Salatiesburg or Avis because they're the top performing. So please consider them as an asset to our district. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Matt?
Before I get started, I did have a couple questions about, Madam President, you spoke about the rising cost. So the A option was 72,000. Is that a cost from this current year increase? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah.
Is that how you're looking at it? So the cost increase for this year is 72,000 for A from this current transportation cost, okay? And then C was a $100,000 cost increase. I'm assuming that's more because of the redistributing of students to even out the classrooms.
And it's an estimate.
And
You have to
that's what I'm
remember it's an
assuming, yeah. So
estimate.
that's an estimated cost of like trying to level out the classrooms and get that. Okay, all right, so thank you for that. I just wanted that clarified. If people are truly concerned with taxes and money, Lily brought this up, why isn't anyone bringing up over and over again the charter school costs at $3 million? At $3 million, 105 students attend other charter schools other than Sugar Valley. That's almost $21,000 average a student. It's way more than our students in our own buildings get. Sugar Valley Charter has 70 students, and that's around $11,642 a student, still more than our students get. If we really want to save money, that recapture, bring them back program is important. That would save a lot of money. Another thing I was pondering as I run, just like Dr. Almer is, this building is a wonderful building. Why isn't anyone in the public bringing it up to be closed? Why don't we save money by getting rid of it? This building has a lot of value, I'm sure, and would be worth a lot to a business locally. Most districts in Lycoming County have admin within their building. Why is this district different? For those who think taxes won't go up significantly with school consolidation, think again. Charter school costs drive that up. Students leave because they don't want to be bussed around. They also don't like the option of leaving their hometown school that they were in. A new athletic complex is being discussed, which will drive up costs, which will drive up taxes. Plus, the cost to reconfigure is also on the table still. We'll have to build on to accommodate at some point. Why not start with option C, the less disruptive option, and wait until the last building project is paid off that was supposed to save us money, but will be paid off in around 2030, if I remember correctly. Why jump to extremes? I'm assuming we're jumping to these extremes to take the biggest head off first, so we can cut that biggest cost first. But in doing so, you end up costing yourself more down the road. Please consider this when you're taking all these options into consideration. Also consider the state budget, as Dr. Ulmer has talked about. The state budget is still a proposal, but this is one of the biggest proposals we've seen in a long time in education. Also, a lot of money into the environmental costs of education. So they're looking to put millions of dollars into building rehab and fixing buildings and old buildings. And a lot of those buildings they're talking about are country school buildings. So please read up on what Dr. Ulmer has given you. I hope the board pays attention to this budget proposal and goes with it. I also would just like to ask too, we still have not been given a time frame of when you expect to do this. Is this next year? Is this the following year? What year are you expecting to do the consolidation? Is that capable to do even within your new proposed calendar starting in August? The final thing I kind of want to ask is, how are you voting on all three of these options at one time? How will the vote be recorded? Are you narrowing it down to two and then voting? Are you voting on all three? How do you hold a vote for three options?
And start winding this down. That hasn't totally been decided yet.
So we're voting in 30 days, but none of that has been decided. That's kind of important.
I agree with you.
So it seems like we're at a rush to vote to meet deadlines, but we don't have all the information. You're slowly gathering it, and I appreciate that, but keep gathering it. There's more coming in still. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your volunteering and working on the board.
Thank you. That is all that is signed up, and anyone else would like to approach the board for courtesy of the floor. The floor is open.
Good evening, Anne-Marie Furman, Watson Township. I appreciate all the comments and everything with regards to the school closing vote coming up. The one thing I want everybody to consider is our taxes are high now. So there are parents out there that are looking to see what school district is best for their children, and they don't look at Jersey Shore because we are already at the top of the tax bracket, right, for them. So I don't know what the answer is for the school closing. I know we just decided to put a roof on a building we don't know what we're doing with, so I don't think that's being good stewards of our money. Put that vote after we decide what we're doing to the school. But our taxes are already high. The decision has to be fiscally responsible for what you're going to do. People aren't coming to our district, like I said, because we are the highest school tax district in the county. We can't afford taxes anymore. I know there's comments in the past where, people say it's because we're paying out for charter schools. We should have school choice, right? Not every child learns the same. So there should be school choice. We always have to consider that. That will always be something, a perspective that we need to take into account. But it's just not about the small schools that's going to deter parents. It's the high taxes. I'm on, I have an income I have to work within my budget. The school district has to work within their budget and be fiscally responsible. So that's what I ask you to do when you make this decision. And do your due diligence, do the numbers, and know that already parents aren't coming here because our taxes are so high. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shelley Helm, Pyatt Township. I kind of want to piggyback off of Anne Marie with the taxes. I had asked, well, I guess, Ben, I sent everybody an email regarding the 5.6% Act 1 index, but I was wondering if everybody realized that this district is only collecting at 4.1%. And I know that you said that you're going to stay within the Act 1 index, which is 5.6%, but just to go from 4.1 to 5.6 is $1.5 million. And I think that right there is kind of stiff. I know people talk about nickels, but realistically, on a $100,000 house, that's $100. I don't really know anybody who I live near, that house isn't $250,000. So right there, it's $250. Because really, I know they like to play funny with it because it's like $1 on every 1,000. But I like to use 100 on 100,000. So I'd like to know why we're only at 4.1%. I know why we were between 2005 and 2013 when I was on the board. Because we only had $5,000 to work with. But why are we not slowly going up? And I'm going to give Ray some credit here, because that's really what she talks about is, why haven't you been slowly going up? With the last 8 years, why haven't you been going up just a little bit?
Taxes were raised this last year a little bit. The
Yeah,
last
but
2 years, the
we're
2
only
years
at
before that, they were just-
4.1%. Like, you all can go to 5.6%. That's 1.5 mils. So we're already starting at disaster. Think about it. Just think about it.
Thank you.
Good evening, Steve Helm, Pyatt Township. I do have a question, and I'm assuming that somebody would be able to send it to me. What is the board policy on political activity in the schools? Is that acceptable to conduct political activity within the school grounds and properties?
Are you talking students or adults?
Well, adults. Is that appropriate?
I'd have to look at policy.
I'm asking to have a copy of that policy sent to me.
They're all online, but I can pull it and send it to you.
If it's online, I'll find it.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I don't do a lot of research there.
It's
as
under
far as-
board docs.
If you go to board docs, all of our policies are posted.
Okay. And I disagree with my wife. I know you find that as a surprise. Don't raise my taxes. I'm good where we're at. I think that it's more important to look at your budget, look at what you're facing, look at the future, look at the past, and use your best judgment to be good stewards of the money that you do have coming in. I think it's important, and I'll keep saying it, because I think it's important to remember the elderly and those on fixed incomes who cannot just simply dip into their bank account and say, I can afford to pay that extra $100 on $100,000. Many of those folks, again, an 85-year-old friend of mine owns his own house. He worked hard to do that. He worked a lot of overtime. He collects Social Security now, he has a small pension. And he's finding it very difficult to make ends meet just heating his home. So, you know, there are a lot of people in his position, in his situation, and those are the people you're representing too. So I'll just ask each and every one of you to consider that, because I think kids are resilient, kids bounce, they're very good at accepting change. Adults are the ones that fear change. And I think a lot of what you hear from your audience and from your people is, we don't like change. Nobody really likes change. Adults really hate to accept it. Kids really will accept it, especially if the adults don't add the fear factor to that change. So just keep that in mind as you make your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greenbeard, Pyatt Township, back to the cyber school discussion, which I don't think we have enough of in this district. Per
We don't have
pupil,
enough cyber schools? We don't have enough cyber schools or discussion?
no, I don't think we fight enough about, you know. I mean, not amongst ourselves as a united group with Harrisburg. Ben, the per pupil subsidy number from the state for us, do you know that number, how much we get per pupil?
For charter schools, for cyber schools?
Regular funding. When they send us,
I do not have the per pupil allocation on top of me.
I don't know what that is either.
Our tuition rate, it could be around, I believe it's like $7,000, $9,000 is what our tuition rate would be, so I would be real close to that.
Yeah, okay. So for all of us, if you go to PDE, they have a breakdown of what cyber charter schools cost. And for Jersey Shore Area School District, for school year 22-23, regular ed students, money that normally would have come to us to help fund our school district, instead goes directly to a cyber school. A cyber school that has no building, that has no grounds, that has no equipment. They give a kid a laptop, maybe, and they're online and bang, bing, bang, boom. $13,922.71 per regular ed student. Special ed students, and we have a significant number of identified students in cyber schools, don't we?
Special ed rate now is about 60 students.
50. 60 students. 60 students at $29,964.35. $29,964.35 from the state of Pennsylvania to a cyber school, and some of those schools have only a 50% graduation rate. None of those schools have a graduation rate that meets the graduation rate of our high school. No PA cyber school has a graduation rate as high as Jersey Shore Area School District. So I suggest that we all get together with administration, with faculty, form a committee, to go after Harrisburg, to change the legislation, but that takes time. But even better, as people have mentioned, to do everything in our ability to recapture some of these kids. Because these kids are not receiving the same quality of education they would get in our district, and yet we're paying $30,000 per 60 kid to a cyber school. We need to fix that. And watch our budget woes disappear.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Brandy Crothers, Porter Township. I'm sitting here listening tonight, and it's everything that's coming up is financial, financial, financial. Everything is about the financial aspect, which I understand. But at the same point, I have 3 small children, in the district. 3 small kids that, one that's not even in school yet. And yes, although children do adapt to change easier than adults, why are we making them lose out on their education, disrupting their education, and when they've already gone through so much in the past couple of years, which people are not, they're obviously not remembering. Things have gone, children are disrupted, they're struggling to catch up, they're struggling to get to where they need to be as far as academically. One of my relatives, their reading level is just struggling so much since the last since COVID. And although I understand that you guys are supposed to take care of the financial aspect of it, the bottom line is you're there to take care of our kids. My children are the most important thing in my entire life. Their education, knowing that they're getting the education they deserve in order to build their future, that is the most important thing to me. If I have to pay, like Shelley said, $100 more in order to, keep a school open that has amazing rates, amazing testing scores, if I have to do that, then I have to do that because it's what's best for my children. If it's something so trivial as a few dollars, which I'm not saying it's not for some elderly people, some people that are middle-aged or young people, everybody gets into financial strain. It's what's best for our kids. And I'm sorry I'm not very, I didn't have anything written down to say. But another thing that I was concerned, you do have the open policy as of right now, right, where the kids can go to other schools. And the only thing is the transportation. Wouldn't that save it if certain parents are absolutely, I almost swore, they want their kids to be in a smaller class. And can't they, and if they're willing to drive to the school to do this, wouldn't that save some of that money that you're proposing as far as the cost for the transportation to equal out? Because that's what the policy is right now, is if you sure, go to Avis, go to Saldiesburg, but you have to find your own transportation, and people are doing it. So please, yes, financial is important, but at the end of the day, my 3 little girls are the most important thing, as I would hope any parent with small children would be saying as well, that their education, their foundation for what's coming next, their next education level, their next working level, whatever they're going to do, is building from these. Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin Wall, Anthony Township. I just want to point out that being a fiscal conservative does not mean that you close down your schools for your conservative families. That's not the definition of being a fiscal conservative. You need to look at your schools as an asset and a way to use to maintain the money in your budget and to increase it. You have now transportation costs, and many of you probably looked at that and said option A is less than option C. But if you listen to what's being presented, one of the option gives you the opportunity to bring students back to the district. When we closed Nipponos, right, wrong, or indifferent, people had a choice and many of them took it. They opt to travel over the mountain to a rural school. Option C is the only option that gives you the chance to offer those families a rural school within our district and for the first time provide transportation. And it may sound like a lot that it's $30,000 more, but not if you capture one student that has a $29,000 tuition rate. So those are assets that you can use. And you can compromise, you can receive a savings for the taxpayer, because option C and option A both reduce positions. So the only real difference then is maintaining the building. But when you look at Plan A, displaces 500 to 600 students. You cannot do that and achieve a savings because many of those families are going to do what we see done in these statistics. They're going to opt for other options at $29,000 or $15,000 apiece. And that savings is going to eliminate, it's going to disappear for what you would have to maintain a building. The educational aspect is not equal. I've talked about this with Dr. Omer. He's refuted nothing I've said. The continuity in education in Plan A is not what you have in Plan C or status quo. Right now, our special education students have autism support, they have emotional support, and Dr. Omer's pointed out you might not need that next year in a 4 to 5 intermediate, but he does acknowledge that you will need it sooner or later, and you must allocate the rooms for that, which Plan A does not have. Also, our special education director signs off on IEPs weekly or whatnot. And they decide the most appropriate education for many of our students is to go up a grade level or down a grade level for things like math or ELA. When you split your district and schools in half, you're creating an added transition, which is known by research to decrease performance. Instead of 2 K-12, you'll have 3, so there's a loss of learning. And then you don't have the ability to have that continuity of special education where you can move kids up or down for math. I have those students in 6th grade that travel up a grade level, but they cannot go back. You'll be creating an added transition that disrupts special education. Your reading specialist refuted what some others suggested would be a benefit in Plan A, which is that you lose the collaboration piece to have the reading specialist there, because when they get to 4th grade and they're no longer serviced, and I'll wrap this up, no longer serviced by reading specialists, they are the people, the only people that are situated that worked with a student for continuous years. So when a 4th grade teacher tries to get to know the student to meet their reading needs, the only person that knows that student really well at the beginning of the year is your reading specialist. And when you remove them in Plan A, you don't have that capability to meet those reading needs as soon as possible. Compound that with the fact you've created a transition, loss of learning, and that Plan A doesn't give you an opportunity to bring back charter school students, right?
Please wind down.
It's not your best option. So rather you came on the board to close a school, or you hope to, I just asked you to take a fresh look and realize you can have a compromise, have a savings, use your schools as assets, and reduce our charter school expenditure while providing a good education.
Thank you.
Bruce Rogers, Limestone Township. A lot of interesting data, information, and it kind of impresses the problem you have in making this decision. It's obvious. I was here since 1982 to 2015 on maintenance, 18 years, and then director of buildings and ground for 15 years. So it's an interesting observation, and I don't have the data. I'll just throw out some observations. If it's a help, great. If not. I remember back in 2005, coming out of the 2000 era renovations and additions, having a fund balance of $5,000. I could have walked into the business manager's office and spent that in an afternoon on a boiler or something. Kind of the point being, and discussion being, how important the children are. And they'll be in these elementary schools for a few years. But I look at down the road, and we talk about us senior citizens being able to take care of the tax burden that whatever money you spend of the public's brings upon the public and the local economy. But how about the kids? Because the kids back in 2005, when they started talking, they realized probably a school could be closed because of the student population being what it was. Those kids that were in school then, now, if they're hopefully still in the school district and can afford to live here, they're building families, buying real estate, they're paying the bill for those decisions. So I guess the point I'm making, the decisions you make are based on a whole lot of criteria. But we have to look at what decisions you make, what impact it has on the economy for these little kids that in a few years will be working and hopefully staying in the community. And will they, they'll be paying for the decisions made at this point. However many square feet of building we need, I think that's been determined probably by a couple of feasibility studies. That should be a guide, along with all the other, criteria. But it was interesting seeing that process, and when the decision was made and nobody wanted to make it, to close Nippenose, all the resources could be put, instead of 2 buildings, into renovating Jersey Shore Elementary building, and that turned out quite fabulous. So I guess in my mind, from a facilities standpoint, you have 2 buildings you're looking at. I wouldn't venture to say what to do with them, but whatever resources we have, how much square footage we need, and the cost of the buildings over 20 years. Typically, the cost of a building, roughly 20% is the initial cost of the building, and the other 80% over 20 years is the cost of ownership. So I guess the point being, however many square footage has been determined by the professionals, what we need to educate the kids well, what resources we have to put in buildings, how far do we separate that between 1 building or 2 buildings, and what impact that would have on the economy. That's just an observation from having seen that over the course of like 32 years. So if it helps, there it is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? Okay, courtesy of the floor will close. May I have a motion to adjourn? This meeting is adjourned.